we talk a lot about storytelling these days, right? It's that word that's being thrown around, and the power of storytelling. And what we'll be talking about today is going a little bit deeper into what I see storytelling as, with my broadcast career, along with helping entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, CEOs craft their talks, craft their story. What are some of the things that I look for, and what are some of the things that I guide them through as they're going through this? So I'm excited that you decided to jump on this, because if you have a mission, a message, you're part of a nonprofit, anything really that you want to play up in the coming weeks, months, years ahead, or build upon or join, this is going to help you. So I hope that you find it incredibly valuable. So as we dive in, why does storytelling matter for your message and mission? At the very basic, let's just dive into this real quickly. Why storytelling matters. It effectively connects with stakeholders. If you have a nonprofit, or if you have that business that you're getting off of the ground, you're going to need some stakeholders. You're going to also need some raving fans, people who are backing you, talking about what you're doing and this huge mission that you have that's so incredibly important. So storytelling will help you effectively connect with those groups or your customers if you're in that B2B space. It humanizes you, right? Storytelling allows us to see people, allows us to also touch into things like empathy and compassion, because we see the story and we start to relate in a different way. When we hear celebrities, for example, talk about what they went through or what they're going through, whether it is a disorder or depression or mental health, we suddenly see them a little bit differently, right? We relate to them differently. What else? Storytelling. Brand, of course. It helps you stand out from the crowd. So when we tell stories, we're doing it also to offer that value add, to resonate, and to stand out from the crowd. Because if every story is the same, we're not going to stand out. Storytelling helps you share stories in really compelling ways, and that's how you're going to stand out. What else? We remember stories because they make us feel, as I just mentioned, empathy, compassion, joy, right? When we watch news stories, sometimes we're hooked. Why? Because we're suddenly thinking, wow, that really made me feel something. I now want to take action. I now want to donate, or we want to suddenly help that person out and volunteer for their mission. So incredibly important, because emotions steer our decision making. That's that action piece. That's that volunteer piece. So as a journalist, I've been fortunate to tell stories for more than a decade and learn a tremendous amount. Of course, in this webinar, I can't get to everything, but I can tell you some core things that I look for now when you're coming from the business perspective and the social entrepreneur perspective. And this is how most people see their story when I first start working with them. They see it as this crazy mixture, because if we think about our personal stories and personal branding, we've gone through so much in our lives. Even if you're 25 years old and looking at this webinar right now, you're still thinking, wow, I've gone through a lot. So how do I encompass and encapsulate and take those pieces of those stories to make it something powerful? Does this make sense to you guys? Drop a yes in the chat, exclamation point, if this resonates and makes sense to where I'm going with this, and how you may see your story as something that's got so many complex pieces. And how can we simplify this? Because we can't share everything with the audience, right? Not all at once, certainly. So this is how I approach really seeing the stories when somebody and I, when we first start working together, is I see it as, what are your core themes? So core themes, Juliet, and for everyone else, when I think of a core theme, I think of what is something that's remained in your life, a core theme of boldness, resilience, grit, whatever it might be, but more of a theme that you can start to see things as. And what are some golden nuggets, which are what I refer to golden nuggets as? These are compelling, transformational, and specific experiences and transformational moments that support that theme. So, for example, and this is golden nuggets, me like shelling out golden nuggets, right? So that's the goal. That's the goal. I had to pause for the gold, right? Okay. So when we talk about transformational moments and discovering your core theme, which is storytelling secret number one, for example, a theme for me has been boldness. 13, 14 years ago, I packed my Honda when I got my first job offer, making minimum wage in a small town in Georgia. And I carried my own camera, wrote my own stories, and still tried to look good for the 5 o'clock news, right? So I was doing everything in the heat, in the sun, packing my camera, my tripod, doing all of those things. And I took that leap, moving 8 hours away from home, because this is something that I wanted to do. What you don't know, also part of that nugget, is that I applied to probably 100 TV stations before I got that first job. Mm. So it took a level of boldness to say, okay, I got the job. It's 8 hours away. I don't care. I'm going, I'm going, I'm alone. It's going to be tricky, but I'm excited because this is what I want to do. And I had that feeling in my gut that this is what I wanted to do. So there was a level of boldness. So for me, my theme in life, I've been bold several times that I could talk about, right? Even building a business from scratch and quitting my corporate job and all of those things. There's a boldness theme. So I could tap into that through some golden nuggets. And those are those transformational experiences, transformational moments. If that makes sense, drop a boom, boom in the chat, okay? Drop a boom, boom in the chat. So I went from this, by the way, 13 years later to freelancing at the White House for CBS and having that whole transformation happen in that period of that decade, right? Not knowing where I would end up, but taking that risk 13 years ago, right? So think for a moment, I just want to take a break here. Everyone probably has a pen, or you could drop a note in your own computer of a theme: boldness, resilience, toughness. What's a theme in your life that's shown up in your mission or your business? We're going to take 10 seconds and we're just going to write it down. I went to black because I want everyone just to take 10 seconds, 15 seconds, and write down the theme. Don't overthink it. Don't doubt it. Write down the theme that has shown up for you. Meanwhile, I'm going to check the chat. Okay. Hold on to that. Hold on to that theme. Okay. So the reason why I say hold on to it is because you're going to be thinking of golden nuggets over the coming days, long after this webinar. If you stay with this exercise and think about the golden nuggets that support that theme that you just wrote down. You don't have to come up with it overnight. Storytelling secret number 2, cast a wide net and then go deep into character development. So we are not the only person that's part of our mission, right? We're not the only person. If you're a social entrepreneur, you're probably building a team or you're getting other volunteers behind you. So we want to highlight not just our own story as part of our brand and our mission. We want to also highlight other people too. And that's why I say cast a wide net and then go deep into character development. In journalism, there's a thing when I am out and I'm with a photographer, a videographer, and I'm interviewing someone, I'm interviewing multiple people. Let's just say for this example, a parade. I'm going to interview multiple people, right? Just trying to get different perspectives, because diverse narratives are extremely important, even for you when you're building. We want to make sure that we get these different perspectives, different value adds. And so when I find someone who's, whoa, that was a great story. They woke up at 4 a.m. to be at this parade and they stood outside, or they dressed up like a pirate and they sewed their own clothes. Like there's an interesting kind of thing about them. I'm going to tell the videographer to wrap it around them, meaning get more video of them, because we want to start and end with this compelling person. You have compelling people who have great stories within your own mission, but you have to cast a wide net sometimes to find those interesting nuggets. So I'm actually prompting you to interview different people, your stakeholders, maybe the most committed stakeholder. Why do they continue to support the mission? Is there an emotional element that you could tap into? If you are part of a health mission, for example, is your biggest stakeholder, your most committed stakeholder in it because their mother went through that same condition. And so they love that you are now empowered to try to do something to fight this. Maybe you're raising funds for a vaccine, whatever it might be. But you want to cast that wide net see who else there is. And when we think of stakeholders, often we think of that big, person who's really behind us, but we also want to, when we cast a wide net, again, diverse narratives, maybe get that longtime volunteer or that brand new volunteer or the person who answers the phone. What transformation have they noticed? Does this connect with one of your core themes, right? So if your core theme for your mission has been diversity and inclusion, for example, and you're about including people in, let's say, the wealth gap, it might be, or something like that. Think about it. What transformation has that longtime volunteer noticed over time that supports that core theme? There are all kinds of different ways. These are just a few examples, right? And then what? Then you want to syndicate those stories. So you want to take that material that you're gathering, you cast that wide net, you've got those compelling stories, and now you want to share them because they are part of your mission. And this is part of your brand. Branding is really reputation. Stories help support that. Your mission, your message helps support that. But it's your reputation and consistency. So it's important that you're visible. Can't stress that enough. So you could put it on your email list, your blog, your social media, sharing these compelling stories, the About Us page on your website. Here's why this stakeholder decided to stay with us for the long term. He's passionate about this because of what he went through when he was 18 with his mother. And you're telling that story. Sales team, one-to-one conversations, LinkedIn, webinar, networking events, on-stage marketing material. You get the drift. You want to now syndicate these stories. It's not enough anymore just to get a story or two. If you want to brand, you have to collect more stories, including your personal stories, and start sharing them in a way so people connect and can see the value add of being part of your mission. And let me pause for just a quick second. When we think about big brands like Nike has shown over time what they value by placing certain people and certain celebrities in the limelight and having them creating shoes after them. Because they're telling you we support diversity, we support an activist component. So they're telling that, not just saying it, but through the people who they are endorsing. So they're sending their message consistently over time, if that makes sense. So I think even if we look at it from that broad angle, right, Nike, which everyone knows around the world, if we think about how they share stories and we look at even their commercials and what they're about and empowerment and that kind of thing, they're sending these stories consistently. So that's really important as you all are looking to brand as well. If we're sharing compelling and authentic stories that reflect the theme and what we represent, the stories you're gathering are supporting what you're doing. And that is why we cast a wide net. It doesn't mean that every single story gets in. It's just saying that you have your eyes out and your ears open for potential stories that help support what you're doing. So if we are always trying to push our own image behind our mission and message, people will sense that. There is a value add when you teach, when you come on webinars, when you do live trainings, when you teach people about why you're passionate about this mission and message, but also when you focus on telling the market things they don't know. So it can't be just, hey, I'm so great, I went through this, help support me. It's got to have more of the global and community feel to it so that people understand the benefit of helping so many different people through your mission. Maybe there's a pay gap between men and women. Let's just talk about that. Like there's a pay gap. So if I were the person behind that mission that helps raise money or does something to help that particular thing, I would also be focused on teaching within my branding and messaging, teaching statistics, teaching the importance, sharing stories of women who've gone through this, sharing stories also of men who are rooting for women in the C-suite to get equal pay, let's say. So I think it's taking different stories, but also teaching the market as you're also weaving in your personal story. And it really comes down to thinking, how am I helping to also provide a service to the community and the world in a way where people can tap into it and learn, but through stories. So it's thinking of it, yes, as storytelling, but also putting your teacher hat on and also teaching as well through your story. Maybe something you didn't see before, maybe something that's happened in the market, maybe a revelation that happened for one of your colleagues who's in it. So it is teaching while telling the story and adding value. And I can't stress that enough. It's adding value. It's not just saying, look at me, look at me, look at me, especially when you are a social entrepreneur and you're working to do good, right? And spread your mission and your message. What I believe is that vulnerability is really key in personal branding because that is the human element that people connect to. So if we say private data, I think that's different from personal vulnerable stories. To me, private data means something different. So when we say personal stories and vulnerable stories, there is a component where if you're building this brand and you're doing it from scratch, I do believe the brands that are going to be most successful in the next 5, 10, 15 years are the ones that share their journey and that share personal stories that help people see why this is important. Because there are a bunch of different organizations and missions that people can choose from now. So you have to put it in that put it in that perspective that people, you do have competition and you do have other people who are vying for the same space potentially that you're in, your same niche. So private data or personal stories. Moving on, storytelling secret number 3 is the power story formula. So P is for positioning and the power story formula. And I want you to think of this more as a framework than a here's what I have to go out and do right now. This is more giving you a shift in perspective of just how you can see things. So one is positioning. So we have to think about whenever we're telling stories, and we don't say this in every story, but we have to think about, why is someone listening to me? Meaning, what is it about my story, my background, my career, or the president or founder's background, story, career, experience that says, okay, this is the person to listen to. This is the expert. This is the stakeholder. This is why the person is gaining our attention. And I think oftentimes people are fighting for branding and attention, but they haven't done this first piece really well, which is positioning. Why are you the person that we should listen to about this amazing thing you're doing? You know, so maybe it is your career, maybe it is your experience, maybe it is your story, maybe it's just your passion, but you've cultivated this, or maybe you've been speaking about it on 50 stages, sharing your expertise after doing research on it. Whatever it might be, really thinking about, what am I saying or doing to show people over time that I'm the go-to person for this, or I really understand this topic. And as a speaker, this is something where we're always thinking about, because we're always thinking about, what is the positioning? You know, what is my value add to contribute to the conversation? It's not always there. So depending on the topic, right? So really understanding your positioning in your message and in your mission. Again, I'll continue to check the chat, and so will Juliet as we go through here, but this is the P of the power story formula. O is all about outlining the structure. And so again, thinking of this as more of a framework of how to think about things rather than a I must do this today type of thing. So when we think of outlining the structure, I think of a story sometimes when we're thinking of it as a talk or when we're sharing stories online. I think of it as a home and inviting someone to step into your home. So this is a beautiful space right here, this home. And how are we inviting people into our story and into, so to speak, our home? What's the framework like? So when we think about outlining the structure, here's my quick cheat sheet. Here's what we've done. That's the foundation of the home. That's part of your positioning. Here's what we've learned. That's the vulnerability piece. When we invite somebody into a private space, we've allowed them to come up the stairs. We've told them more and more about the different layers of our mission, and we're sharing with them the why. And then here's why we're sharing this with you, so you can spread this to the world, so you can spread our mission. So here's what we've done. Here's what we've learned, and here's why we're sharing this with you. So that's a quick framework. So back to the home, if we think of that framework and we're thinking of that foundation, how many of you have ever gone upstairs that are creaky, and you've wondered if the whole house is going to fall apart. And you're secretly inside, even if it's your best friend, you're thinking, where are we? And why are we here? And I'm kind of scared to keep going up these stairs. Well, the same thing applies to your story. If you don't have the foundation, it's going to be hard to move people up different staircases, so to speak, into the different layers of your stories, because you haven't set that proper foundation. So you want to make sure we have pretty foundation, right? So we can build them into something that's structured, and then take them into this, what I call, like, it's kind of that small space in your home that's yours, or that small area that you really find yours. And this is where you would reveal that vulnerability piece. This is where you take them inside and you say, here's what I went through. This is why I'm so passionate about this. This is why I have this heart-centered approach about why I want to change the world with this idea. So you're really letting them in. But that foundation has to be there so that they want to come in, that they want to come in and they want to hear more about what happened or what this important critical piece is. That's probably the vulnerability piece, which is the piece that most people in this phase have the hardest time sharing, frankly, right? Because it's something that requires us to go a little bit deeper. And then, of course, like I said, that final piece in this phase of outlining the structures. Okay, we're sharing it with the whole world. We're on the rooftop and we're saying, okay, this is why I want you to go out there and just share it with the whole world. So from the outlining the structure piece, it's so important to do this so that you see that you've got to have that positioning, you've got to have that framework, so that when you do put out your call for fundraising, call for donations, all of those other pieces have already been done. People really understand what you're trying to do and why you're so passionate about it, and they see a little bit of your story, or the stories of your stakeholders, or the stories of your colleagues, or whoever might be most impacted by this, that you're sharing those stories. That's all been done. So now when you're on the rooftop screaming it, they totally get it. W of the Power Story formula is all about weaving in your dynamic message. Don't assume that your stakeholders know and understand your dynamic message or any shifts you've made over the years. So for example, if you're starting out right now with something, that message, your why, what we do and how we help change the world may change in 5 years, may change in 2 years or 3 years. You can't assume that your stakeholders always know and are in your boardroom understanding the thought process. So you've got to remind them through stories, through messaging, through value add, through webinars, what you're doing and your message and your mission. Then we remind them, right? So we remind them, as I just said, weave it in to the P and the O of the Power Story formula, which is the positioning. Here's why we made this shift. So if you're going to switch up on your people, on your stakeholders, on your customers, you want to remind them why. So remind them back again. We realized after doing our research that this is the best approach for us to be taking, and that's why we're switching our focus in 2021. And then you go back to outlining the structure again. And then E is all about engaging. We want stories that engage. That's why it's important to cast that wide net, but also to be mindful of, and this is something that was in the chat maybe earlier on, but be mindful of things like your voice and your tone and your energy, because people can sense that both in writing and of course through video. But even in written posts or in emails, people can get a sense of who you are through your voice and your tone and your energy. So it's important that you're mindful of that. So I wanted to provide, because I know a lot of folks maybe just getting off the ground, a few quick tips. You want to smile. Smiling is both warm and persuasive when you're speaking. And when you're speaking, it's okay to pause, just like we did throughout this webinar. It's okay to pause, to check in with people. And then, of course, you want to practice, especially if you're just starting with speaking more about your story or the story of your mission. You want to make sure that you practice, that you get some of those golden nuggets in place. I could talk about boldness all day because I've got those golden nuggets that I've said so many times that are just true for me. R is your reward. What results will you provide the stakeholder or customer moving forward? So really thinking about it from your mission standpoint. Since I'm speaking to so many social entrepreneurs here, I want to make sure that you also see that it's important from a business perspective and fundraising perspective, that you're also making a promise, that you're saying, our goal is to do this. And if we hit this goal, within 1 year, everyone in this community will have water, if we meet these goals. So you're making the results tangible instead of just the ask, which is what we see a lot in the marketplace, people just asking. But what results? If we bring on X amount, this is what it's going to mean for our communities. You have to remind them about the results that you're really working towards. So kind of taking them inside your boardroom in a way where you're giving them the best nuggets out of that boardroom meeting, and you're saying, okay, here's what we just came out of. We have been talking about how to make 2021 a winning year for us. And here's what we're going to do. And so you're reminding them that this isn't just a plaything that you came up with. You are focused on a mission, and you've got results that you are looking to provide. Reveal the benefits, reveal the results, and reveal the reward. So just to recap, and of course, there's the recording. Storytelling secrets. 1, discover your core theme. Remember those golden nuggets that I sprinkled? Then the go wide, then deep. Cast that wide net. Look for stories everywhere. And you get to decide which stories you want to keep in. That's you as the president and founder, right? Or your team. You get to decide. You don't have to put everything in there. And then, of course, the power story formula. So the power story formula, we talked about positioning, making sure that it's very clear to your audience, super clear about why you are the person that they should be listening to about the mission. Outlining the structure. Remember that framework of the home, making sure your structure is there. W is weaving in your dynamic message. E is being engaging in your voice and your tone and your energy, even if it's an email, even if it's on social media posts. And then R is the reward. What are you working to in the tangible results that your stakeholders can look forward to in the future? So if you have any questions, you can always email me, but I want to thank all of you for allowing me to be here. I've been a mentor. That's my mentee when he came to DC. I also happened to go to Ethiopia last year, so we got to connect in 2 different countries within the same year, which was super cool and unexpected. So if you're part of this program, then know that you are in the right place. So I would just continue to work on it. That's why I say it's a framework, not a must do right now, get off the webinar and get at it. I mean, you can, but for you and others who are new at it, start to think in that way. And then I think what you can do right now is think about content. This is what I would do. I would think about content that's going to teach my audience about the mission that I'm working on. I would start to think about why am I passionate about this, and how can I share with others the importance of this, and really looking at, okay, what can I teach? What are some stories or statistics? What are things that I can share to educate my audience? That's part of being engaging, is just simply educating, allowing people to see, Moses, that this is what you're about. And when you release to the masses, oh my gosh, I've formed this nonprofit, or I've formed this company that's going to help with this, they understand that you've been building up to this. It's so much more powerful than just coming out of the gate and announcing something when no one has known that that's what you're about. So I think your why has to be so big. I'll start with there. Your why has to be so big that it truly helps to push out some of that fear. Because if the self-doubt is there as you're trying to build something that's going to change the world, let's think about Elon Musk, right? Part of what is people are drawn to him, and he's a polarizing figure for many people, right? Whether you like him or not. My point is that his ability to just put himself out there has changed the way people support what he does in his mission. Again, not the same social entrepreneur that you might be, but I say him as an example as, there are a lot of things about him that people don't like, but they still support his mission because they're like, you know what? He shows that every time he gets knocked down, he's going to come back up. And that's his theme, right? That resilience theme. So his why is so big. He's trying to change truly the way we do things. So I know that's a huge example of someone who's maybe on a pedestal for some people, but I say that to say is that everyone goes through, usually at some point or another, that self-doubt. Everyone has, especially if you're starting a business. Oh my goodness. Because frankly, it's hard. So I think actually thinking about, why am I doing this? And where can I just start by taking that first step? And that first step, Nicole, might be, I'm just going to put a post out there that I'm really passionate about this cause, and here's why. And I mean, just taking that one step and saying to yourself, okay, if I can do that, maybe I can do the next step, which is to go on video and, share this community live that I'm in that needs help. So just taking it, I think, one step at a time. I believe that action is what helps us raise our confidence. So that's why it's important to take just that small step you're going to commit to and say, yes, I'm going to do this. And then from that piece, you will do other things, but just taking that small step instead of the huge step, which is like, let me build this platform and, do this huge thing right now. Just take that one small step. And that could be, I just threw it out there, a social media post, but it might be something else, Nicole. It might be actually forming the nonprofit. It might be talking to a group about why you're passionate about it, right? Oh my goodness, yes. And I think that goes back to several pieces of the Power Story formula where you are reminding them, you've got to tell your stakeholders about your passion and your commitment to this. And I think storytelling is a great way to do that. And people can sense it through the through the tone, right? Through the voice. People can see, wow, you're really passionate about helping people in this manner. So I totally agree. And I think that it goes a long way. I think passion goes a long way. And it's what's going to keep you going too when things might be tricky. That would maybe be the easier way, but I can tell you that people are busy. And if you are the president founder, you're the person behind this, and maybe you're starting out maybe with a small team, depending on how things go, that you may be the one who has to do the boots on the ground work. Just depends how big your team is, depends on how much you have starting out. But people are busy. So to ask them to leave a comment or a testimonial, guess what? They're going to give you 2 sentences or 3 sentences. When you are the journalist, or you're the person putting your journalist hat on and you're asking the questions, you're going to get the stories out. When you tell people to just comment, it's a lot different. So be mindful of that. You could try both ways, but typically if you're asking to get deep into someone's story, and you ask them for a testimonial or a comment to leave on a website or somewhere on your social, it's a lot different than when you actually go and you ask them thought-provoking questions.